3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Lots to get to on today's program. Coming up next hour, our good friend David Clonaker will be with us. Fresh off another disappointment last night for Carolina basketball. Really out of the gate, Georgia I told Elijah this was like if you equate it to boxing, right out of the gate, Georgia popped Carolina upside the head, bloodied the nose, gave him a little body blow. And, in the second round, if you will, Carolina kind of came back out and showed a little something. And then Georgia popped them again. And that was basically it. There were a few flashes here or there. I thought Jamari Thomas had a nice second half. But South Carolina, you were down 11 before you could really blink. And I just think it was, even if you got it to 2, you and I were talking this morning, it was 18-16, and then you went cold again, and you played some good defense in that little stretch. But again, being down 11 that quick on the road, I hate to say that that's too much of a mountain to climb for this team, but it was. And last night, one of the strengths of this team, at least most of the time under Lamont, has been the ability to defend. And Georgia shot about 52% from the floor last night. South Carolina wasn't terrible at about 42%. It's not terrible. It's not great. But if you're defending well and rebounding well, you can probably weather that storm a little bit. But Elijah's done some digging. I don't know the final results. I asked him to hold on to it. But we'll touch on that with David and a few other things going on. Once again, yesterday, thanks to Jeremiah Donati for joining Elijah and me here in studio. Great to see him. Great to see our good friend Charles Bloom here in the studio. We got to a lot of things. If you missed the interview, he was on with us for close to 45 minutes, and all of it is up on the podcast page at 1075thegame.com or on our app. And we're going to revisit just a portion that relates to men's basketball coming up a little bit later on. But we won't spend our entire time with David talking basketball. But look, we have to talk about it because it's part of our job. We are the flagship station, and they are in the middle, quite literally, of their conference season right now. I mean, this weekend will be the halfway point. I expect them to be, I'm sorry, but I expect them to be 0-9 at the end of Saturday's game. A&M is a very good team, very physical team. And Buzz is getting a lot out of his guys. They were very comfortable against Oklahoma last night. They win by? It was a 7-point win, but it was never. It wasn't that. Yeah, it wasn't that that close. I didn't think, especially second half. They pulled away. But I see enough in this team to believe in Lamont for sure. I believe this goes back to what I say about a lot of things in college athletics. And those of you who've heard me a bunch, again, one day I may make T-shirts. You need more good players. I don't like to disparage any of these kids on the team, but I don't see it as something where, like, Lamont, what are you trying to coach out there, man? The old, four corners. What are we doing? No, he's not doing that. He's got a system that works, but it's not working. And I don't know how much of that is anything other than talent. And look, you got some key injuries and some things that have affected you. Jamari came off the bench. On that note, do you feel like that's something that might continue? Jamari Thomas off the bench? He played 30 minutes off the bench, so
maybe as long as he's playing valuable minutes. But
scored 19 points, 16 in the second half.
Maybe you start him if he plays like that in hopes that you don't get down 14-3 to start a game like they did last night against Georgia, and then him have to come in and try to erase that deficit. Your on and off numbers with Jamari Thomas they're certainly better than almost anybody on the team. At this point, I think you might as well just start him and play him as many minutes as he can go. And look, offensively, this team just kind of is what it is. They're not going to, become, I don't know, they're not going to become Auburn or Alabama overnight. That's not going to happen. This is a team that has existed outside the top 100 in offensive efficiency pretty much all year, and it's only getting worse and worse. Whoever can give you a shot in the paint. I mean, they were good near the rim, but this team was 1 of 10 on shots inside the paint and away from the rim. So specifically speaking, this is about I think they say the rim, it's anywhere between like 1 to 3 feet from the basket. So like paint shots, 1 of 10. That you got to be significantly better in that. And at that point, is that coaching or is that just guys aren't making plays? And the turnovers too. Like you haven't been able to take care of the ball. Jamari gave you a lot of good minutes in scoring, but I think he led you in turnovers last night too. So the same thing has happened with Colin at times this year where he's looked like your best player. And then some games he's leading you in turnovers. So Jamari came off the bench and gave you good minutes, but he also gave you 5 turnovers. And once again, you lose the assist turnover ratio like you have in all of your SEC games except for 2.
Another question I've gotten a little bit around the community, and I know you have as well, and probably a lot of folks that cover the team, is what's up with Cam Scott. And the honest answer is I'm not really sure. I mean, for all of the hype surrounding his recruitment, his decommitment from Texas, and his recommitment to South Carolina, he was in this very room announcing his decision. I don't know. Look, it's something significant. Is it that he's just not ready for this level of basketball? Is there something that's not in his game that Lamont needs him to do or do more of? Or are there people that are just better than him and he's just not going to crack through? I honestly do not know. He's still a young player. There's still plenty of time. He played 4 minutes last night, took 1 shot.
Yeah, 4 minutes.
And that's about when he comes in. I think he's averaging 3 or 4 minutes when he plays. So, I mean, they're attempting to give him something, but this is clearly, in my estimation, things that aren't happening in practice.
Yeah, and it has to be because that's what earns you the minutes on the floor. And when he plays, I don't think he ever really finds a rhythm in games because, again, like the most he's played in conference play this year was the Vanderbilt game where he logged 13 minutes, and then he logged 10 minutes against Mississippi State. That was a 30-plus point game the entire time. Defensively is where he struggled a lot. And there are some times defensively where he does look lost, But how that happens, because, I mean, I watched the same kid in the EYBL Nike circuit guard really good players, right? And be able to do so adequately. I am very shocked that this was the development that happened this year.
Right.
I figured, in non-conference play, you might have to ease him along. But I truly figured that once January hit and once we get to the spot we're at right now, that he would be logging minutes and helping this team. I don't know what it is, man. At this point, I'm at a loss as to what might be happening in terms of what his development is like and what is kind of holding it up. Because, look, you figured on a team that's 0-8, that is the worst offensive team in the SEC by a country mile, unfortunately, when you look at the efficiency numbers, that surely he can come in and give you a spark on that end of the floor.
Yeah. I agree. So and again, that's not me being critical of Lamont's decisions. That's not me being critical necessarily of anything Cam is or isn't doing. I don't know. Lamont's not really talking a lot about that. I don't think you want to take. You don't. I'm not. You don't want to throw a kid under the bus. Mm-hmm. Not to say that's happening,
right?
But you don't want to if that were something that someone might feel. I know it's weird to say it this way, but warranted. You know what I mean.
Yes.
I don't know, but maybe we'll talk with DC about that a little bit. See what he's hearing. Carolina and A&M go at it Saturday at CLA, and a little bit later on today, a family 4-pack of tickets, including parking.
That's the best part.
So you can do that.
Free parking. Look at that.
Yeah.
Free admission and free parking.
That's
You don't
right.
have to worry about your car.
Yeah. And if you catch Elijah in a good mood at the game, he might buy you a hot dog.
I might.
You never know.
If you come up and tell me how good my hair looks, then I will absolutely buy you a hot dog. You compliment the lettuce, and
Just
I'm all yours, man.
First person only.
Yeah, first person only. I ain't made of money, right?
Yeah.
Let's make that abundantly clear.
I don't want 1,000 people coming up to you.
Yeah. I will take a line of 1,000 people coming up to me and
That'd be nice.
complimenting my hair.
That'd be
I would
nice.
love that.
Yeah,
That would be
nice.
great. I mean, my ego would take a really good boost. I would appreciate that greatly. However, first person to come find me on Saturday night and compliments the flow that we got going on here, then I'll buy you a hot dog.
Yeah. A few other things going on that we'll get to, including some NFL stuff. Speaking of which, Mike McCarthy has, I guess, air quoting, I love this, withdrawn his name from consideration for the head coaching job.
After his 0 interviews.
In New Orleans. And that he has shifted his focus to 2026. Look, this is a man who's won the Super Bowl. And, again, before injuries just completely derailed the Cowboys season, the 3 previous seasons, they won a combined 36 games in the regular season. Here's the question. He says, I'm looking to next year for, all right, what, and I'm serious when I ask this, what jobs open next year? Giants?
Most likely, because Dayball's going to be on a hot seat.
Could be Miami. I like what he's doing, but
and that team has been snake bitten with injury, or bad luck, lack thereof.
I mean, I feel like Houston's
was the scapegoat there,
yeah.
And of course Jacksonville already fired their coach.
Yeah,
Indianapolis, maybe.
I say Colts.
Yeah, if Steichen has a bad year,
I guess Cleveland, but.
I don't think Cleveland's ownership and their GM has necessarily shouldered a lot of the blame for how bad they've been on Stefanski.
Yeah.
I think there is at least a little bit of self-awareness to understand that you're bad because you invested
why am I forgetting
more money than God into Deshaun Watson.
Who's Seattle's coach right now? I'm just totally blanking on Seattle's coach.
I've got his face in my mind.
Yeah, but they're okay.
They weren't bad.
They're not terrible.
Honestly, they competed. They had some really good wins.
So I don't know. But McCarthy says, I'm looking ahead. So is he going to be on TV? Maybe just take Mrs. McCarthy on the...
I don't know if I could find a least compelling coach to put on TV.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, would you want to watch Mike McCarthy talk?
Probably not, but
football?
I don't. But you know what? I don't like Rex Ryan, and I know people love Rex Ryan. Going to be your guy, you think?
I think so. I've warmed up to it. How about that?
Okay, it's good.
I've warmed up to it.
It's good. Kellen Moore coaching Spencer Rattler. I'm here for that.
Yeah, because that's probably going to be who the quarterback is next year.
I hope so. I'm here for that.
I'd like to see Spencer get a full year.
Kellen just goes and coaches with the Eagles and just stays. Maybe Mrs. Moore is already down in New Orleans looking for a place.
I mean, you don't have to look very far to find Kellen if you would like to interview him, New Orleans.
That's right.
He will be in town.
That's right. We'll get that for you. And one quick note, too, on basketball, not for the Carolina game, but this came out yesterday. I'll probably mention it again a little bit later on. But East Coast fans rejoice. It was one of the headlines I saw. The men's basketball national championship game, which typically starts at like 9:20, 9:25 Eastern, will tip at 8:50.
All right. Now, is it actually going to tip at 8:50?
That's what they said.
Or is that,
they said tip time. I guess TV time is 8, and they will tip at 8:50.
Because in college football, in their playoffs this year, they had a really good time of telling you what a start time was, but that was the broadcast start time. They didn't tell you the kick time.
No. From what
you tune in at 7:30 to watch them kick the ball off, and then you're like, oh wait, we have 20 more minutes until this thing kicks off.
Yeah, no, they're going to tip at 8:50. That's what the NCAA itself has said. Come back on the other side. We'll come back around to Gamecock basketball, but an interesting comment yesterday from Jeremiah Donati about the program that we think you'll want to hear as it relates to the long term. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Looking forward to being at Pro Swing tomorrow. The guys from Integrated Media, of course, also the guys from Pro Swing. And when it comes to watching the big game or maybe the aforementioned college basketball tournament, which will be here before you know it, or anything else you like to watch, do it better than ever with integrated media. Don't have a home theater set up right now? Dave will come out to the house, walk around with you, figure out what's best. They look at all kinds of stuff, including where you want your TV, where does the sun shine in. You don't want glare all over the screen during the day if you're watching a weekend of college or professional football. You want to go outdoors, they can get that done for you too. Wi-Fi that works everywhere, professional grade, built for the home, stream better, game better, work better, whatever you need when it comes to home theater and so much more. Experts at Integrated Media ready to make it happen. Love these guys. See, I just get tongue-tied. 803-948-8327. Call Integrated Media. Welcome back in. Postgame Show rolls on this Wednesday afternoon. As you heard in the promo a little earlier, and I mentioned it briefly, tomorrow and Friday, we are going to be live at Pro Swing for their first ever golf tournament. Looking forward to it.
It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, we're not playing.
No, they don't. After watching me play on that golf simulator the other day.
You had fun, though.
Oh, I had so much fun.
Yeah, it's fun, man.
But everybody in that building saw that and said he did not need. We don't need him playing.
No, that's fair.
There are kids here.
I'm telling you, I still want to play that little kid course.
That's the one that I'm suited for, actually.
With the castle. I want to try to hit that castle.
I made it a point where I was like, I'm going to hit a drive in the fairway 200 yards. I'm not leaving till I do it. And I was at one point, I was like, I might be here all night. But no, they stuck with me. They let me do it. I finally did it.
There you go. There you go.
My palms got sweaty. Knees weak. Arms were heavy.
Yeah, well, you'd be all right. No, we're looking forward to it. Be out there tomorrow and looking forward to meeting a bunch of you and maybe having some bang bang shrimp.
Definitely having some bang bang shrimp.
Or fish and chips or something. I don't know.
Ain't showing up if that's not there. That was actually part of the deal.
Well, if not, you can just walk right next door to Bonefish. They'll hook you up.
They will.
Yeah.
That's how they get me there.
Maybe somebody there will say something nice about your hair.
I'm hoping. I go into every single remote hoping somebody says something nice about my physical appearance because I'm shallow. Every single time. I'm not.
I had a friend of mine who saw our picture yesterday of the three of us, you, me, and Jeremiah Donati. They're like, you look short in that picture. And I'm like, man, it's because Jeremiah and Elijah are like 6'4", and I'm not. Not my fault.
You did not want to stand in the middle.
I did. I was like, I didn't stand in the middle.
Setting it up, you said, I don't want to stand in the middle because these guys are too tall.
If Elijah puts his arms over me, then, So, but I'm not. I am who I am, man. Y'all are tall. I think Jeremiah might have been taller than you.
He is? Yeah, he's got about an inch or two on me.
Yeah, I mean, he's tall. So.
I was, someone hit us on Twitter yesterday asking if he was taller than me, and I said, yeah, this would be a really good post battle.
Yeah.
Jeremiah and I could post up.
But he was a golfer. But you know what? I remember the first time I went to the Heritage and realized even for like golf, like there's dudes that are my size. Like I remember when Corey Pavin won the U.S. Open. I was like, yes, somebody my size has won a major. Yes. Corey was like 5'9", 5'10", $165. I was like, yes. But then, you see guys like Retief Goosen and Steve Jones and Ernie Els and, obviously like Tiger. I remember seeing, like Retief Goosen. I was like, dang, dude. But he's like, 6'3", 220 probably.
That almost sounds like a name you made up.
I know, right? No, two-time U.S. Open winner. All right. Elijah has a stat here. We're not picking on the basketball team, but 0-8 in conference play kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, and the problem, mostly offensively, we've talked about it. So I was curious as to how many teams in all of college basketball in conference play have a worse offensive efficiency. That was my high school coach's number one stat, by the way, the OER. Yep. He lived and died by it, man. Yep. I mean, it is a tried and true metric there to measure how your offense performs, right, on a consistent basis. There are only 5 teams in college basketball who have conference play offensive efficiencies worse than South Carolina's 91.7. That would be... And that's in the United States of America. That's right. Yeah, this is not tracking any college basketball in Kazakhstan. I haven't broadened my horizons out there yet. I'm still waiting to hear back from Borat, my correspondent. Sure. But... KSU is pretty good, then. Those 5 teams... Southern Utah. Okay. Abilene Christian. Heard of them. Both in the WAC. Uh-huh. NJIT. That's the New Jersey Institute of Technology. Real school. Yep. That's from the America East. Okay. St. Peter's, the Peacocks. Yep. From the MAC. All right. All those A's. And lastly, Mississippi Valley State in the SWAC, the team that is pretty well known in Division I basketball as the worst team in Division I basketball. But those are the 5 teams. The only 5 teams in America that South Carolina has a better conference offensive efficiency than. And are those teams for their league? That's a really good question. Well, that's okay. I just was curious. I mean, because you would think they're probably not highly rated. Mississippi Valley State is for everything. Okay. I am afraid. Okay. That one's been pretty ugly this year. They've actually made decent money taking a bunch of L's. They're 0-8 in the SWAC. It's not looking good. In all seriousness, a lot of this, as we've said, we believe comes down to primarily, things that, as Will Muschamp used to say, can be fixed through recruiting. We asked Jeremiah Donati about the state of affairs in men's basketball. He's obviously brand new on the job, but here's what he had to say.
There are no easy wins. I mean, every single game, and we're seeing that this year in the SEC is just a dogfight, and it's really been a tale of two seasons for the men's and women's program. We were talking off air about. The Clemson game, and just seemingly things were going in a great direction. Had some injuries, and we just have not had any luck since then. But I'll tell you, I think Lamont can really coach, and I think that his brand of basketball, even with some of the injuries, we've seen us, really give some of the best teams in the country everything they can handle, and probably should have won those games. And so that's encouraging if you're a Gamecock fan. I feel like we do have a coach who can coach. Do we have a talent gap? I mean, that's something that he and I are really going to have to talk about. I mean, I think we've got some good players. I think we clearly probably didn't have the depth that we need to compete in and night out, and that's a little evident that we're seeing that in real time. So, it's not. The question came up. It's not a matter of if Lamont's coming back. It's how can we better support him? And so when the season's over, I actually have a meeting with him next week to start that conversation about what NIL looks like in the spring, and then into revenue sharing. So because it's not just about paying players and finding more money to pay players. Yes, that's part of it, but what are we doing as a program to help continue to build that? So it's an ongoing evaluation. It's probably not one or two things I could tell you right now that I can tell you, but yeah, we need some more depth. I could tell you that's probably one thing that we'll be looking at and making sure that the roster is strong, because I don't anticipate a big drop off in the league next year. So but we've got some key pieces that we think we can bring back, and so if you can do that and continue to build this and bring in some new guys, I think we will like what we see. But
and he makes an excellent point there too. We got some key pieces we can bring back, and I don't anticipate a big drop off in the conference next year. I don't either. Now look, a lot of good players in this conference are going to head on to the NBA. Janai Broom won't be back. Mark Sears won't be back, amongst others. But that's just a couple of the biggest names in the league that won't return next year. But all these coaches are doing well. Again, you look at a guy like Coach White, who moved from Florida to Georgia, and for the that he's making a difference. You look at what Mark Byington's doing in Nashville, and you had a big name up there, but he just wasn't getting it done. Now Byington is. Pope is making a difference. What a big win for Kentucky last night. And Kentucky's Kentucky, right? Tennessee's Tennessee, as long as Rick is there, and they were good before Rick at times. So, what can you do? And you and I talked about this, and we kind of knew what he might give us that answer yesterday. We didn't prompt him on that, but you can tell right away, too, that Jeremiah sees that. Lamont, what can I do for you? Like, what is it that we're going to need here? And those answers will come, maybe a little bit next week, like you said, more likely in April when you have your full-on postseason meetings. But you'll have to get the ball rolling quickly, no pun intended, in terms of going out and trying to mine through the portal to get something for you.
It's going to have to be a heavy investment in it, too, and especially when it comes to the evaluation, because that's really the crux of this year's.
Speaking of evaluation, we'll come back on the other side of the break. A couple of Gamecocks featuring in some of the latest NFL evaluations and mock drafts. We'll tell you who when the postgame show returns. Time to talk a little draft, how it might feature in around here. A couple of Gamecocks in the mix, a couple of Clemson guys in the mix. Welcome back in. He's Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. David Cloninger joining us around 4:15 this afternoon. And we'll talk a little more Carolina. If you got thoughts, on the team, like I know, again, we're not naive around here. This year's ball club, I just a stark contrast from last year. And last year was a very, very, very pleasant surprise.
It was a special year. A lot of things went right.
But you didn't anticipate that it was going to look like this.
No. I mean, my expectation was that you'd contend for a spot in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a center who started on a Final Four team to come in, and you got a Conference Player of the Year to come in and be the point guard.
Yeah.
And you had a good recruiting class, and you were hoping some other guys that were on the roster would take that next step. It just hasn't happened. It hasn't all come together, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And that's really the most disappointing part.
Right.
So I mean, it's been a lot of things that, at the beginning of the year could lead you to believe that this team would be really good. And that's what makes this so puzzling. It makes it such a hard thing to answer, right? Lamont last night in his presser, kind of compared it to a Rubik's Cube. It's kind of like that. I don't know how to solve a Rubik's Cube. Jay, do you know how to solve a Rubik's Cube?
I don't, man. I can do the best I've ever done is like 2 sides.
My head hurts after like 3 minutes, and I rage quit.
Yeah.
Or I'll start peeling the stickers off, and then I'll get the results I want, right? And I don't know what peeling the stickers off for this team looks like, but when you start peeling off some stickers.
There was like a little book, like a how-to book, and I remember looking at it one day. This is back, when I was a kid in the 80s. And I was like, I'm not reading that to try to figure this thing out. Then I see some of these things where people can do it in 12 seconds. I'm like,
figured it out.
I don't get that. Well, anyway, we'll talk more hoops with David and a few other things with DC coming up in just a bit. In the meantime, a little two-parter here. Daniel Jeremiah, fantastic NFL talent analyst for the NFL Network, has his top 50 ranking out. This is not a mock draft. This is a top 50 player ranking. I'm going to give you his top 10, and then a couple of Carolina guys do figure in. Number 1, Abdul Carter, Penn State lineman who is a beast. He's awesome. Travis Hunter at number 2, the Heisman winner. Ashton Jeanty, the runner-up for the Heisman at number 3, the running back from Boise. Mason Graham, Michigan defensive lineman. Tyler Warren, Penn State tight end, number 5. Where will he go? That will be interesting. Who needs a great tight end? He won't be the 5th player taken. Again, these are rankings. This is not a mock draft. We'll have a mock draft in a second. Jalen Walker, another tremendous defensive lineman from Georgia at number 6. Colston Loveland, Michigan tight end, number 7. 2 tight ends in the top 7. Will Campbell, the LSU lineman, offensive lineman at number 8. Jedi Barron, Texas corner at 9. Cam Ward is the top-ranked quarterback in Daniel Jeremiah's opinion. He is number 10 on the overall list, right ahead of Shedeur Sanders at 11. South Carolina does have 2 guys on this list, and Nick Emenwari at number 21. Daniel says Emenwari is a massive safety prospect with ideal instincts and ball skills. He fits best as a strong safety, big nickel, or sub linebacker. He can consistently undercut routes and take the ball away in those roles. He trusts his eyes and drives on the ball. He had multiple pick sixes in the games I studied. He does have a little tightness that shows up in man coverage, but he has enough speed to recover. When he's aligned in the deep half, he's not as effective against the run. He is aggressive to fill, and he's a strong tackler on the front side. Overall, Emenwari will be a difference maker, provided the team that drafts him deploys him close to the action. So there you go. That's what Daniel Jeremiah writes about Columbia's and Carolina's Nick Emenwari. And then go down. This one, I don't want to say surprised me. I didn't know where this was going to go, Elijah. But considering that Kyle Kennard was the Nagurski winner and was an all-conference performer, I figured he'd be on this list. He's not. But T.J. Sanders is at number 42 from Daniel Jeremiah. Daniel says Sanders is a long, lean, twitchy defensive tackle. He aligned up and down the front in South Carolina's scheme. He's disruptive against the pass, boasting an explosive get-off. He uses his length to keep blockers off his chest. When he keeps his pads low, he can create pocket push. South Carolina had one of the best defensive lines in the country, which limited some of his production. Against the run, he can unlock his hips, shoot his hands, and hold the point of attack against single blocks. Overall, Sanders is an ascending player with the ability to impact the quarterback. And I'll give you an addendum. Andy Staples, Ari Wasserman this week are down in Mobile covering the Senior Bowl, and I've seen some of the things they've been having to say. Others that are down there, from all I can gather, and I know you've seen a little bit of it too, TJ Sanders is having a heck of a week in Mobile and is doing himself lots of quality favors.
Yeah, the Pro Football Focus guys that cover the Senior Bowl practices pretty heavily on a yearly basis have been blown away with TJ Sanders, and really that's been one of the overall standouts of the entire event, and that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I expect TJ to be taken in the second round of the draft. And I think, going into last year, 2023, specify here, I don't know if that would have been the case that people expected him to do that. And you saw glimpses in 23, like that Georgia game in 23, where he had like the half of his career, right? Where you're like, wow, you really saw the glimpses, and you never saw the consistency towards the end of the year. And then this year you saw it all season long. And I think one thing that was explained there that is really accurate, and I think that explains a lot if you just look at some of the football card stats, as we call it, is that he played on one of the best defensive lines in the country, like one of the 5 or 6 best defensive line units. And one man can't get all the tackles, right? Everybody got to eat on that. And Tonka Hemingway ate a lot. Dylan Stewart ate a lot. Kyle Kennard ate a lot. Those guys were massive threat to that defense, and it's not as good if there is no TJ Sanders. And I think you saw a lot last year, especially with the run block or the run defense comment. That's true. The guy was a space eater in there, and it was an incredible season. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's even maybe taken closer to the first round. I don't think he gets in the first round,
right, but
I highly expect him to be taken in the second.
Yeah, moving into the first could be difficult just based on some of the things that we've seen in history, but again, he's doing himself favors. And I would even wonder, and I love Daniel, so I'm not, this is, but after this week, if Daniel were to redo this, does TJ move into the high 20s, low 30s? Does he move himself up 10 spots in a top 50 player ranking going into the draft? How much does that matter? Again, a mock draft and a player ranking are two different things. Because what do I need? I might not need a defensive tackle. I might not need a running back. Again, we talked about Washington this year. Washington's got 8 picks, and they don't need a quarterback.
Nope.
They should have a very good draft.
This is dude, if Washington hits on this draft, and they even get half of those guys to be legitimate, reliable starters, they opened up a championship window. Yeah. And I'm not kidding.
No, I agree.
Like, they open up a championship window.
And apparently like 80 to 90 million in cap space next season.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so anyway, speaking of the mock draft, this is from the Athletics' Nick Baumgardner and Scott Dockerman, our buddy Scott Dockerman. I like their number 1, and I'm not going to run through all 32 pick. Well, we don't even know all 32 because we don't know who's going to pick where yet, but they have all of them out here just in case. They have Abdul Carter going to the Tennessee Titans at number 1. Let me say, I keep saying, and they say it too, the first sentence they write, the ideal option for the Titans would be to trade this pick. I agree. But if you don't, you take Abdul Carter and you get a wrecking ball up front for years to come.
An immediate game changer on that side of the ball.
Because he'll make an instant impact. And in a division where right now there's 2 good quarterbacks. I don't know what Richardson is yet in terms of the guys he'll be going up against.
Still one of the biggest mysteries.
I don't know. I don't know. I still feel like Anthony Richardson by the time he's 24 or 25 years old, because he's only 22, 23, whatever.
Like 3 years younger than Shane Daniels and has played one more year in the NFL.
So I think the Colts just have to be even more patient than most NFL teams want to be. But, having Abdul Carter getting after Trevor Lawrence, having Abdul Carter getting after C.J. Stroud, in addition to whomever else they play. But just that there's an instant impact guy. Again, I think trading it is the best thing. But then again, how and where do you put Abdul Carter as a top pick, edge guy in relation to Clowney, Garrett? Is he that good? Is he better? Maybe so. We'll talk more about this, where a Gamecock is in this mock draft. Get into a couple of phone calls, too, coming up. 11 minutes in front of 4 o'clock here on a Wednesday afternoon. Jay and Elijah with you. Final few minutes of our first hour. David Cloninger will join us coming up at 4:15. I want to go over most of this athletic mock draft. I don't have time now, but it's actually really intriguing. And so I want to get to a lot of this. They've got, again, they like a lot of us think that Tennessee should trade that first pick and get a lot for it, or find out what you can get before you make that decision. If not, I agree with them. Take Abdul Carter. Do not take a quarterback there. Do not take one of these. I like a couple of them. I do. I think Cam and Shedeur have big opportunities. I do. I think there's a couple of guys that could be better than we think, maybe. Like, you know, how good will Quinn Ewers be in an NFL offense if surrounded properly, which is almost always the case. Again, was it you? We were talking about the old Washington Redskins that won 3 Super Bowls with 3 quarterbacks. I think you said shout out Mark Rippon, right?
That's right.
Mark Rippon won the NFL MVP in Washington. And then he went to Seattle on a gigantic contract and couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. You know why? Because there wasn't anybody around him, and he didn't have the best line in the NFL. Again, maybe ever.
Being allowed to camp back in the pocket and pick teams apart is a pretty good benefit.
It's nice, but they've got. Hang on, my interwebs here don't want to work. They've got Cleveland at 2, taking Travis Hunter. The Giants at 3, taking Cam Ward. They right here, we're torn between Ward and Sanders for QB1. There are days it feels like Sanders is more ready. Long-term, Ward, who improved every day of his lengthy college career, could have the higher ceiling. In my very limited expertise, despite what kind of sports fan I am and what I do for a living, I would agree with that. Now, maybe it's just because I watched more Cam Ward games than I did Shedeur Sanders games. I don't know. I'm really, in a good way, anxious to see what Shedeur becomes in the NFL, you know, because people are going to compare him to his father's ability. Obviously, he plays a different position, but his father's in the Hall of Fame. You know, and it's not fair sometimes. It's not. But, you know, now people also compared Peyton and Eli to their father, and that worked out okay.
Peyton, at least, surpassed it, and Eli had a really
Archie
solid
had played
career
for a good
that won
team,
2 Super Bowls.
Archie's in the Hall of Fame if he plays for a good team.
Oh, yeah. If he wasn't running for his life.
All the time.
Every single snap.
All the time.
Not fair, but.
I'm going to finish this mock before we talk to David, so we'll hold that over. Let me get to Trey, who's been holding on for a few minutes. Trey, how you doing, bud? Welcome in.
Good, Jay. How are you?
Doing well, sir.
Good. I just want to call in, just kind of hit on Gamecock basketball, men's basketball.
Yeah.
Basically, I want everybody to kind of, keep our heads up, man, because honestly, if we could just, like I was telling Elijah, just foul shots and don't turn the ball over, that could really have changed, what's a winless in conference to actually we could have had 4 wins probably. But I still think we're going to win one that people don't think we're going to win down the stretch. I know it's tough, but everybody just keep our heads up. LP's a good coach. It just didn't quite click this time, I don't think.
Yeah, a couple of misses in the portal, and then the injuries did set you back, I think. Trey, thanks for the phone call. I agree with everything you just said, man. I mean, a couple of these margins have been razor thin. And we saw it the other day. You pushed Mississippi State to overtime in your gym. You lost to them by 35 in their gym. The truth is in between, and I think it's closer. I think the truth is closer to what happened in Columbia than what happened in Starkville. Again, the Oklahoma game, like I say, that to me, that and the Starkville game have maybe become the 2 outliers of the 8 in conference play. Again, Oklahoma's not very good.
Right.
Carolina just they didn't. I don't think they quit. Again, the word I used when we came back in this week was they just faded down the stretch. They just didn't have enough. I think they just went like. Because, I mean, it was
there was a certain point of discouragement when you start missing shots late in game to try to catch up.
I mean, it was tight, and then you blinked, and Oklahoma was like up 7, and then you blinked again, and they were up 12, and then they won by 20. That was not indicative. Look, I don't know that it was also indicative that you lost to Florida by 1 based on the talent and style of play, or Auburn by 3 based on the talent and style of play. But you did, which shows you can. So, Trey, to your point, yeah. And a little later on, we have some other things to look at with the team, and we'll go over the remaining schedule. And again, at some point, next hour, we'll do it. Next hour. We're going to give you a chance to win a family 4-pack of tickets and free parking, I'm told, by the great Josh Yeoman. Hour 2 coming up. 4 o'clock on this Wednesday afternoon. Welcome back in. Second hour of the Postgame Show coming at you from downtown Columbia's Herndon Chevy Studios, along with Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Thank you so much for choosing to be with us this afternoon. We appreciate you. David Clonaker will be with us in just a little bit. We'll talk some Gamecocks storylines with him, what's going on around basketball, maybe what he's hearing about Cam Scott and the lack of production, playing time, minutes, whatever you want to say. It's
all the above.
One of the multifaceted storylines that Carolina basketball has around it right now, and a few other things that we're hearing. Yesterday we had a great conversation. Again, thank you to Jeremiah Donati, the new AD here at Carolina, for joining Elijah and me in studio. One of the things that Jeremiah brought up, too, is obviously all of you know now, the stadium enhancements at Williams-Brice, which will primarily be about adding a lot of luxury seating, because there is a high demand for it. And South Carolina isn't just behind when it comes to that level of seating in Southeastern Conference football. They are the field has lapped them. Even Vandy, with its new improvements, has a lot more luxury suites. And I would imagine that even in Nashville, where Vandy football, I mean, it's not Big State U. There's more Tennessee fans, probably more Kentucky fans in Nashville than there are Vanderbilt fans. But it's Southeastern Conference football, and there's a lot of big companies in Nashville, Tennessee.
It's still an entertainment product.
Yes.
It becomes a pretty good entertainment product.
And they'll pay for it, man. They'll pay for it.
Those companies
got
alums working for them.
That's right.
Who went to these SEC schools that do come and pay their Music City win tax every year.
Or again,
unless you're Alabama.
Arkansas has 10 times more luxury suites than does South Carolina. 10 times. Not, again, I said yesterday, not 10 more.
10 times.
10 times more.
They're not all owned by Walmart either.
No, they're not.
Clarification. Or Tyson.
That's right. I want to mention this real quick. I make no secret of the fact. In fact, today I'm wearing a T-shirt of my favorite team, Arsenal, in English football, soccer. And today is the final day of the group stage of the Champions League. Even if you don't like soccer, you've heard of the Champions League. Makes a lot of money. Every game is being played right now. Basically, I'm not lying when I say this. Every game is basically at halftime right now. They do this because it creates drama. There are several different slots to be filled as, again, this is the group stage. Imagine this as sort of it's not the same because it is a knockout tournament, but kind of like the regular season portion. And once today is done, then the 16 teams, or actually it'll be 24 teams that make it through, but 16 of them will have a little play-in tournament, and then the top 8 get a bye. So you can all figure that out. And then, it moves on here in a few weeks' time. You want to be one of these top 8. And there's about, I don't know, man, there's about 12 teams today that can still finish in that top 8 based on the numbers. So there's a lot of drama. There's a few teams, including mighty Manchester City, that may get knocked out today.
With a
completely.
loss.
The point I'm making here is all these games are being played at once because that way you don't know any of the results that might pertain to you or might have an impact on you. You just got to go out and you got to go win. If you have any shot at whatever it is that you're playing for, you need to go win the game. Now, other results may help you, but you don't know what's happening. And you may even know, like, hey, that game right now, because they're also in, minute 53 or whatever, and they're up 1-0, and we're down 1-0. We got to do something. Like, that, but you don't know a result, right? You don't know a result. I truly wish the NFL would adopt this at the last day of the regular season. The NFL has 5 television windows on the last weekend of the regular season, 3 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. I don't have a problem with it per se, but you and I were talking. What if one of the games in the Saturday early slot has an impact on somebody that's playing on the late Sunday slot? And then whatever happens ends up making that game obsolete.
To where they're going to start playing backups. And we get what we saw when Kansas City threw Carson Wentz out there to play against Denver.
And look, there may be, like for Kansas City, let's just say, because that's a good example, even if they were in the NFL playing them all at the same time, Kansas City could have afforded to do that.
Still
and if you can, if you know it, like Liverpool today is playing in the Champions League. They're going to be the top seed moving on. And they are today, from what I understand. I haven't looked at their lineup, but as I understand it, they are playing their B team today. And they might even have a few like C team kids that they could call up and play for. Like, hey, guess what you get to do today? You get to go play in a Champions League game, or at least be in the locker room and on the bench. Like, good for you, there, 19-year-old kid. Proud of you. You know,
good way to spend an afternoon.
Call your parents and tell them to watch. But in the NFL, and look, everybody's watching this right now. Whatever team you like, you're watching. Or if you're a third-party interest, you know, and you're watching whatever is maybe the most important game. Same thing could happen in the NFL. I feel like the drama that could be created would be even better for the National Football League than things already are for the National Football League. Now, I know most NFLers would look at me and go, dude, here's the ratings. Here's the revenues. Why do we need to change? And you don't need to. I just like the drama that this creates, you know, like and again, the suspense, you know, like that I'd like to see that adopted from time to time. Terry was reminding me, like, maybe now in baseball, I think, did baseball do that last year? He said that every game on the last day of the regular season started at the same time. Yeah, I'd like to see more of that.
Because they're already flexible with schedules. One thing I would like to do is like a nice wrinkle there. If you really want to maximize drama, you pick a game, kind of like this year, like how Vikings and Lions was going to be for the division and the number one seed no matter what. Standalone game that night. Everything else played same time, like at 3 o'clock, right? You have that whole everybody else.
If it's guaranteed,
then flex it into a primetime slot.
Help me out, because I can't remember. I think regardless of any other outcome, nothing else was going to impact that, right?
No, nothing.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. And that was Sunday night.
Because I would love to, focus on that game alone, and then everything else that day, maybe discount Red Zone for a day.
Yeah. But see, there again, you and I were talking, like, if you had Red Zone, and I mean, again, Red Zone.
The greatest Red Zone day of all time.
All time. I mean, you might you get people like one day only, $25. And it would be so
Week
worth
18.
your 25. And, you know, now, God bless Scott Hansen. He's already busy. But trying to go through 16 games at once, or even at your point, 15 games, and then you might have a standalone if there is one. But what if there's not? I mean, that just sometimes
16.
It's coincidence, you know? So, again, am I advocating for it? A little bit, yeah.
Because that would be a fun Sunday.
It'd be cool, man. It'd just be cool. Like, and they do this in the Premier League in England, the last day of the regular season, all games kick at the same time. And that happens across most of Europe. All games kick at the same time. Last day of the group stage of the World Cup, all games in the group, at least, kick at the same time. It adds to the drama. You don't know. And I guess the biggest thing here and you touched on it, it forces you to play your absolute best lineup and strategize to the best of your ability. And it gives your fans what they deserve, which is your best. Way too often in the NFL, we just get a slog fest late, you know. And I that's not
Week
fun
18 is not good television.
Usually it's not, man.
It's usually really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, with the exception of maybe 3 or 4 games that have any type of meaning to it in the playoff picture, that's usually it. Or maybe with seeding, you might get lucky and there might be 1 or 2 teams that are within a game of each other that would make Week 18 a little more meaningful. But I'm all here for it because in the NFL too, like this adds a little bit of variance, right? Because every Sunday in the NFL, it's a marathon. If you're watching football all day, it is a marathon. But for 1 week, wouldn't it be nice for this sucker to be a sprint?
A sprint, yeah.
Just an absolute sprint for like you are drinking through a fire hose basically to try to consume all of this, all the stakes, everything that comes with Week 18 football. Because not all of them will be good too. Still, I mean, half of those games will probably be meaningless. Right. But you maybe have 4 that you're looking at and that will have serious implications, and it does benefit the teams not knowing who wins. And you, like the witching hour would be, I mean, Dude, you just tune in for that alone for the fourth quarter of all these games, and you have an hour and a half of insanely compelling television just in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, a few of these games in Champions League today don't have any. There are a couple of them that don't impact anything.
They're built-in snoozers.
But when
exist.
and to your point, that there's going to be a couple in the NFL, but you make the schedule in the spring, so you don't know in the spring what is or isn't. I mean, very few people would have predicted that on the last day of the regular season, the Minnesota Vikings and Detroit Lions would be playing for the top seed in the NFC.
Remarkable. I would not know it. I would not have guessed.
But the season unfolded as such, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that. Real quick here, I want to finish up just a little bit of this mock draft, and I'll just have to come back around to it. But we got plenty of time. But a couple of big ones for you. At 6, they have Shedeur Sanders going to to Las Vegas. I did see today that Pete Carroll was asked about a reunion with Russell Wilson.
Would be interesting.
He didn't rule it out, but he also said, we're going to make sure that every option is on the table. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, you're not getting Patrick Mahomes to come over, so.
That does fall under every option. Maybe Rich Gannon's available.
The Panthers got James Pierce. That'd be good.
At 8. Yeah, get you an edge rusher.
Number 8.
Considering you let Burns walk.
Your Saints, Mikael Williams from Georgia, right there at 9. Also an excellent edge guy.
To pair with Brian Brissy.
Yeah.
Already, a promising career.
Cowboy fans at number 12, Ashton Jeanty to help support Dak.
I've seen a lot of Ashton Jeanty to Dallas Mox.
Be all right.
That's a popular one.
Yeah, it'd be all right. Luther Burden going to Cincinnati to help Joe Burrow.
Ah, yes. What the Bengals need.
Boy.
More offense.
They should get some defense. But you know what?
I would probably
if you score 49
invest.
points a game and you win 49-45, you know what you do? You win.
But if you score 45 points a game and you give up 49, you lose.
That's true. And at number 24, Minnesota Vikings, Nick Emenwari.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that fit. And even mentions in that article, in that mock, it is a direct Harrison Smith replacement. I think that would be a fantastic replacement for Harrison Smith.
We'll see. Just one of many, 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 many mock drafts that will be done between now and late
mock draft
April.
season.
It is, but it's fun. And a couple of Gamecocks will be featuring in there. All right, speaking of the Gamecocks, a few storylines to discuss with our good friend David Cloninger on the beat for the Post and Courier, and DC will join us when the Postgame Show returns. Welcome back in. Postgame show rolling on this Wednesday. Jay and Elijah with you. A little bit later on this hour, a chance to win tickets to see the Gamecocks and Texas A&M Saturday afternoon at CLA. We'll do that for you coming up in just a bit. Plus, we'll have headlines of the day, drive around the SEC, and more. Always a pleasure to talk with our good friend David Cloninger on the beat covering Gamecock sports for the Charleston Post and Courier. Good to have you, sir. Another disappointing loss for this basketball team. Such a far cry from where we were this time last year and talking about this program, David. They are who they are, as our good friend Michael Haney might say at this point. What constitutes a turnaround right now that makes this at least salvageable this year?
Well, Jay, I think that ship might have sailed. I know that mathematically, they could still pull this out, maybe get 3 or 4 wins. But in terms of trying to get this team to postseason, it's just a little bit too far gone, at least looking at the future schedule. And you look at this team right now, what their problem is that they are very inconsistent scoring the ball. They have a very troubling tendency to not get the ball to their best player, and they can't hold on to the ball. 93 turnovers over the last 5 games, that ain't going to win a whole lot of ball games. So if that doesn't switch, and I don't know how you can at this point after playing 21 games, it's just a lost season. And you just hope at this point that you've got, let's see, they're 0-8 in the league, so they've got 10 conference games left. Right. Yeah, just don't get skunked. Just don't go 0-18. Find your way to get a couple of wins. And there's a few out there. LSU, Ole Miss, you get Georgia at home, you get Arkansas at home. Just try to get a few of those so you're not completely embarrassed. But at this point, it's just like, you keep looking at those turnovers and think that's 15 more shots a game that you could get. Maybe you hit them, maybe you don't. But you can't just keep giving games away.
And then for the future moving forward, I mean, we had Jeremiah Donati in here yesterday and kind of talking about, like, how do you stay competitive in a conference that is not just the most competitive in the country, but it's the best. And it's one of the best leagues that we've seen in a long time in terms of performance on the floor. And that's not going to go away, right, with the investment that this league has made in basketball. When you kind of assess the future of the program as a whole, where do you think you kind of go from here?
Well, I mean, the first thing to do is try to make sure your kids don't get discouraged and give up. And, they're going out there and playing, so there's something to be said for that. This league is just going to be beating each other up night in and night out. I said before the league started that this is the kind of year where your regular season champion is going to be 11-7. It's just that good and that deep, with the talent of the teams in this league. So you just hope, you look at next year's roster and say, okay, well, you got to get this and this and this. You got to replace this and this and this. But the main thing is that you've got to find a way to say, okay, what can I develop on this team this year that will at least give me some solid pieces going into next year? You definitely know who you're going to lose, but there's also a couple of pieces that you might lose, you might not lose, and there's going to be the transfer portal as well. It really helped you build a team last year. You're going to have to get in there and hit on your evaluations this year. They got some good players out of the portal this year, but they weren't the guys that they really wanted to get.
You make a great point about next year. Only focus on one name, and that's Cam Scott, who was a highly recruited individual, chose to decommit from Texas and stay home here and play for the Gamecocks. And it's just not happening for him. He's not getting himself onto the floor. That would certainly lead me and a lot of others, David, to believe that whatever it is that's happening in practice is not giving Lamont enough confidence to put Cam in when it matters. What more might you be hearing about that? Because I think you made a great point when you said you got to develop what you've got. Well, there's something that's very developable, if that's a word, but it's not happening right now.
Yeah, man, I did talk with Cam and with Lamont at the Fort Myers trip. And that was way back in November, because even then I was like, it seems kind of funny that it's a top 35 prospect here and the kid's not playing much. And Cam even says, like, yeah, I'm learning. I'm learning what I need to do, and it's going to come. And he was very confident, very calm, not upset or frustrated or anything. He said, I'm good with where I am, and it's going to come. He did get in the game last night, but that was, of course, the first game in the last 3 that he's played. So you look at it and think, what's going on?
And it was just 4 minutes, David. Not that it's just 4 minutes.
And the final 4 minutes. So you look at that, Jay, and you just say, well, who knows what's going to happen from here? But you just hope that you can keep building him up, keep developing his game, and then hopefully he'll be able to make some contributions. But, of course, at this point, everybody looks at it and says, oh, well, I'm sure he's going to be gone. Who knows what's going to happen? Mm-hmm. You never know what's going to happen. And he knows what he has to do to get on the floor. And, just got to go do it. And we'll see if that happens over this last half of the season.
Yeah, and in terms of from a player development standpoint, too, I mean, how would you kind of evaluate this year? I know one of maybe the disappointing things is Colin maybe not taking that extra step, I guess, as a scorer. We've seen it at times because he did go for over 20-plus against Auburn and almost single-handedly, won that game with how he was able to score. You've seen glimpses from guys like Morris who put on the weight, and you saw him at times get, prove that he could score the ball a little bit too. But how would you kind of evaluate things from maybe a progress standpoint with some of the individual players?
Well, I think Colin's doing everything he can to try to get this team to win. He's playing hurt. He's playing through a pretty bad thumb injury, and he's still going out there and doing what he can do. Obviously, he's going to be limited if they can't get the ball to him. So that is kind of a case, as I mentioned earlier, it's a very troubling tendency to not play through your best player. But then again, when you get a point guard out of the portal in Jamari Thomas, who is a very talented and elite scorer, that's great to have, but then it's like, okay, well, is he going to score or is he going to get the ball to the guy that you really want to build your offense around? And it's kind of been that give and take throughout this history or throughout this season. You do see some pieces coming with Morris, as you mentioned, with Arden Conyers coming on. Zach Davis is playing, decently well, but I think he tries a little too hard at times to kind of, make that hero play instead of maybe just making the fundamental play. So it's just been, quite a few things that's all kind of gone wrong at once. I find it really interesting that our columnist, Scott Hamilton, the Post and Courier, wrote at the beginning of the season, hey, making the NCAA tournament again, that's been the big thing holding back South Carolina basketball all these years, just the inconsistency to try to make it to the NCAA tournament. And he took vats of crap for it online. Well, I wrote the same thing. And I didn't hear anything. But now you look at it and say, see, this is what we're talking about. We didn't have a crystal ball. We didn't know what was going to happen. But it was always going to be, can you do it again? And you thought that there were some pieces there. You knew it was going to be a tough league, but maybe you can just get your head above water and going 500 in the league this year. That might get you in. Well, you start out 0-8, and it's like, well, okay. So it's kind of getting back into that. I've been around here a long time, fellas. As you know, it's like, well, it's just another one of those kind of seasons. And you go back and look and say, man, is it going to be worse than that 2-win season that Darren Horn's final team had? Going to be worse than 2 years ago, which that team played really well at the end of the year. And had they not had some bad officiating jobs, they would have won even a few more games. But it's just a lost season, and you got to get it done with, and then go ahead and start attacking. Make sure it's not going to happen again next year.
Yeah, Lamont's first season, you saw progress towards the second half of the conference slate. They weren't winning a lot, but you saw them playing better basketball. So maybe that kind of thing happens again. We'll see. DC, before we get you out of here, Jeremiah Donati also mentioning yesterday, as we all know, the enhancements to Williams-Brice are in the planning phase right now. Any more detail you're hearing about when this gets going and exactly what some of those enhancements are going to look like in terms of, is it suites, is it a new club level, a combination of both? What are you hearing about what they can do in the existing space?
That's what they want, Jay. They want the more premium space because that enhances the, let's all say it together, the game day experience. And that's what you have to do these days. That said, there's no firm plans yet just because they haven't sat down and said, here's what we want to do, here's what we're able to do, where's the happy medium in between. So once they figure that all out, they'll go ahead and start it. I mean, the first, construction crane won't start working until the end of the Clemson game next year. So we'll see what's happening there. But, guys, as you know, there's always a big gap between planning and actually getting done around around here. So, there's also that big old parcel of land that they announced, 3 years ago now? It's like, oh, man, this is going to be great. We're going to really develop it. Crickets. So this, I don't think, is on that level because it has been approved and they are going to move forward on it. But they'll go ahead and finalize the plans for what they have. And the main thing, like you guys saw with the Manchester U soccer game, they actually got that game despite not having the kind of luxury suites that those teams are used to having.
Yeah.
So you look at that and say, you want to get those kind of events in here again? It's pretty obvious what you got to do.
Yeah.
But that said, the stadium's old. It's been built onto several times. You just got to get in there and say, here's what we can feasibly do.
I've got ideas. If they come to me, I'll get it done for them. That's
there's your first problem right there.
I'm just saying. I got answers. I just don't get the questions. I got about 30 seconds left. How about those Atlanta Braves offseason moves, huh?
What about them? Because right now I still see a lack of 300 innings on the starting pitching staff and nobody filling it. Yeah. It is funny, though. A Yankee fan came up trying to talk crap to me that day. He was like, hey, man, thanks for Max Fried. I'm like, you're welcome. I mean, it's like you're going to find out. He'll win the Cy Young Award next year, and then he'll get in the postseason and get knocked around to a 6 ERA. Have fun.
And you're paying him a lot of money.
He actually thought he had one up on me. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, at least that makes you feel better, so I appreciate that. Thank you as always, sir. We'll do it again real soon.
That sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me.
That's our good friend David Cloninger, DCPNC, to follow on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to his newsletter, and you can find all that and more at postandcourier.com. This is the Postgame Show.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some traffic issues on the roadways this afternoon, starting with one on I-20 eastbound, just after Spears Creek Church Road and exit 82, North Main Street at Wilson Boulevard, US 176 at Broad River Road at St. Andrews Road, and on Weed Drive at South Carolina 6.
Just got off the phone with our buddy David Cloninger, talking a few things around Carolina athletics, really primarily men's basketball situation and what's going on there or what's not going on there, depending on one's point of view, and a little bit on the enhancements to Williams-Brice. We touched on both of those things and more yesterday with new athletics director Jeremiah Donati. Again, that entire interview with Jeremiah, about 45 minutes, is on the podcast page at 1075thegame.com or on our app, which you can get at the App Store.
It's also on YouTube.
The Google Play Store.
The entire interview, just there.
YouTube. I like me some YouTube, man. I'm telling
you.
You.
Watch the interview.
About half of what I do these days is on YouTube.
Anything you need. Yeah.
It's all there.
You can go find an old game from like 10 years ago. You can find it on YouTube.
Yep. So, good stuff. Good stuff. Now, you know, I kid when I say it. I got answers. I don't know what they'll do at Williams-Brice. Jeremiah told us yesterday that the good news is there's a lot of space that can be repurposed, that you don't have to do a lot of deconstruction. You don't have to remove a lot of things. And I've had a lot of you hit me through, the last few months or years, with, hey, bowl in that last section over by the student section where the visitors come out. That's a good idea. You could do some nice loge seating there the way you've done on the other side, down where Carolina comes out. And maybe you can get a premium for that, or you get, something kind of like the seats, maybe you have tables or what, I don't know. There's one little place, right? But that's not a lot. I've had a lot of people ask me, what about the old coaches building, the Floyd building, and where the Jumbotron is? And, that's obviously above the student section. I don't know. Personally, I've said this before. That's a good building. And I was in that building a lot the last couple of years. Bill Gunner and I were doing our TV show for Gamecocks Plus in there, in Coach Spurrier's and Coach Muschamp, at least for a couple of years, old office. It's not huge. The building, and I think right now some of the IMG folks, or Learfield folks now, Learfield folks are working in there, and they've got a lot of game day logistical things that happen in there. I think the cheerleaders use that space, and there's a few things they can do for some recruits and families and things. I've always said that building would be awesome for an actual Hall of Fame museum. Like right now, the University of South Carolina has a Hall of Fame, and they put people into it every year. But there's no plaques, paintings, stats, exhibitions.
It's not a museum.
And at some point, you need one. And that building would be perfect, in my opinion. But for whatever reasons, that's not happened. And that building is, again, I'll give you my opinion. I think that building is underutilized relative to its amazing location. But you can't put a bunch of suites in there. Now, you could rent out a couple of things in there, like the coach's office, and on the other side, there's a conference room that looks right down.
Being able to rent out the old coach's office would be,
and I don't know what you could. I don't know what the cost of that would be. Somebody else needs to come up with a market price per game, but that'd be all right. And just all you got to do, like right now, there's no sliding windows, so you would need to maybe put some sliding windows so you could have it be open air. But you also might not want to be dealing with the student section.
So maybe not having it open air.
And when I say dealing with, I don't mean that in a bad way, but, that would be loud, but that might be part of it. That'd be cool.
Reality. Yeah,
but,
part of the experience.
But another thing somebody has asked is, well, why don't they just, you take down the Jumbotron and you build something else right there? That's a great theoretical proposition. I love that Jumbotron. Or whatever you want to call it. I like the word Jumbotron. It's just fun.
Everyone knows what you mean when you say
that's good.
I think that's a fair term.
I think Sony actually, when they first were putting those out, like back in the 90s, I think that's what, they called it like the Jumbotron. I think that was the actual brand name for some.
I think it's usually known as like the thing that like hangs from the rafters, like in a basketball arena or something, which I would love to have for my home.
That'd be awesome.
Like a little
I'm sure you can get one.
Oh, they exist.
You can get one.
Or an arm and a leg. They look really cool.
Yeah, you can get one. Clemson, Mississippi, I think some other schools, but those are two that I know of, that have built their suite building, if you will, in the end zone. And I was telling you too, that's a great view. I know some people may not share that, but sitting in that view, actually, that's what coaches like. That's what they call the all-22, and that's how, as you and I were talking, that's how football is played, if you will, kind of north-south. I mean, sure, you get a great view on the wide shot if you're sitting on the 50, and I'm not knocking sitting on the 50 or on the 25 or whatever. I get it. But that end zone shot, and let's face it, sometimes you just got to do what you can do when it comes to that type of construction. If I had my druthers, and I don't, but if I did, honestly, I don't know that Williams-Brice really needs that south end zone upper deck. If you could find a way to do something there. Now, again, I'm talking, these are incredibly high dollar things. So I'm just talking more, as I said, I got answers to questions that haven't been asked.
Endless suggestions.
But if you want to put 50, 60, 100 suites, I don't know how many you want to put. You got 18 right now, and you obviously want significantly more than that. And you can find places to utilize some current space and put some in with minimal disruption to the overall capacity. But it will be impacted. Could you do that? Could you take off that? Now, again, taking off an entire upper deck sounds like a lot of seats gone, and it would be, and replace it with however many people sit there, and I don't, is that the best move? No. But is taking down the Jumbotron and building on that side better? Then you're kind of blocking the view of the city, which is pretty cool for most of the other parts of the stadium. There's a lot of aesthetics to think about when it comes to stuff like that. So there's no great answers as to what's going to be the most ideal. And I don't want to see capacity dip, but I've heard from some people that sit in that upper, I've talked to people before. If you sit in that upper south end zone, apparently, which I never have, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I've never sat up there. You can't necessarily always see the end zone down below you.
Partly constructed, I feel like, or obstructed. Partly, I guess, in the back of the end zone, it's a little more difficult to see.
Right. So, look, I don't know what the answers are, but I'll be curious once further planning is done, and I guess evaluation is done. Like, how many can you add without realizing, oh, you know what we got to do? We got to build a whole thing. And then the question becomes, is building a whole thing going to be worth it over the next 20 years?
Especially if that construction bleeds into the season, because yes, the final result at Vanderbilt is going to look very nice, but my God, that place is an eyesore on TV. And it's ugly.
And you can't, and you don't want it to be overly disruptive to your current product whenever those games are played, even if it's, really only 7 times a year, but it's still there and you're working all the other days. I don't know. We were talking with some folks recently, maybe you do what Alabama has done where they don't have one big Jumbotron. They've got 4 medium trons, and they put them in each corner of the stadium. So everybody has a view, and it's big, but it's not gigantic. But at the same time, I've heard from some students, one of the things we don't like is we can't see the Jumbotron.
Yep, you have to turn around all the way, and even then.
And even then, and so, again, nothing is perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious to see what they, what kind of things they come up. What's and then what gets put on the table for Jeremiah and his staff to go over. What the board will ultimately look at. What everybody finally has. All right, here's options A, B, and C. And does it involve a ton of new construction? Could you find a way to remove some of the south upper and put a suite building behind it? Like, again, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And how much room is back there before all of a sudden you're impacting the ability to get to the cabooses or to the clubs below it. And I don't know.
At the end of the day, it's just going to matter.
These are questions for your dad. Your dad's an engineer. These are questions for him.
That is true. He could put. He would be able to tell you the plausibility of a lot of things that we're talking about.
Yeah, load bearing things.
Exactly. He expert on that. That was his job for 35 plus years.
Load bearing
for a state government,
sure.
right? Like that's his forte. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the number, or I guess the biggest element, is going to be how much more money is this going to make us if we pull this off.
In the meantime, 803-404-6100, 803-404-6100, family 4-pack of tickets and a parking pass. Carolina, Texas A&M, and men's basketball this weekend. Caller 5 if you want to go. Those tickets are yours, 803-404-6100. It's the postgame show. 11 minutes in front of 5 o'clock here on a Wednesday. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of our second hour. Top of the hour. Headlines coming your way. A little bit more on what's going on around the Gamecocks. Again, Elijah, I'll probably have him repeat some of this. He did a little statistical deep dive on where things stand right now for Carolina men's basketball. We'll do some of that for you. And some of the other things that Jeremiah Donati brought up yesterday, including, as we talked about just now, the enhancements to Williams-Brice, which I remember him saying back in December, was probably job one, because as he pointed out yesterday, that's where the money is. And, we made reference to, what Eric Hyman had to do when he came to Columbia and just how far behind South Carolina was. And I had somebody call me today and say, how is it that they're so far, or why is it that they're so far behind again? I was like, well, I don't know if it's again. I don't know if, 20 years ago you realized just how much demand there was going to be for premium seating, but they are behind, and they are now pretty far behind. And so that's the reality. But as Jeremiah said, that's it, and what you can do to expedite that. But I don't know that you can. I don't know. Again, without brand new construction, and you're not, obviously, when I say brand new construction, I don't mean that you're going to build a new football stadium. Now, that would be awesome, but
that would also cost a lot of money.
I don't even know what would it. I mean, seriously. Now, listen, NFL ballparks have a lot. Like, you're not building SoFi.
You're not building a place for the purpose of bringing the Super Bowl here.
Which
is the reason why most of these NFL stadiums are changing to domes.
Yeah.
It's the only reason.
Yeah. Or at least retractables, right? But I mean, how often does the roof at Mercedes actually get opened? I mean, I feel like,
that's a really good question.
I mean, hardly ever. Even if it's a really nice day in Atlanta, Georgia. And it ain't like Atlanta, Georgia's Detroit, Michigan.
I can't.
But they just don't open it, man. Dallas, they just, Phoenix.
What's the point?
They just don't open it.
I think about how much money they wasted making it a retractable roof when you don't ever use it.
When
you could have just made a normal roof.
And remember, that's one of the reasons they wanted to build the new ballpark. It was like, well, we want to have a better roof on the Georgia Dome. Well, that's going to cost you $600 million. All right, well, let's just build a new one. Okay. And now I will say, again, Mercedes-Benz, and a lot of you that are Gamecock fans are going to go maybe for the first time when Carolina plays Virginia Tech.
That place rules.
It is amazing.
It is awesome.
And I've not been to SoFi because I've not been to L.A., but I would like to go see that place because apparently it's just even better. Anyway, I know that's a top-of-mind thing for a lot of fans, whether you're going to be a patron of those seats or not, because it is, as Jeremiah said, it's top of mind because of how much money it can help you bring in. And that's another thing. Like, have they? Yeah, and I know they have. So when I ask it that way, it's rhetorical. But like, what is the demand? I mean, what's a waiting list? Do you have a waiting list? Like, I'm asking. I should have asked that yesterday. I wish I had.
I feel like there has to be, or else you wouldn't have answered that so confidently.
Right.
Because my question was a more broad, like, how do you tackle the fundraising part of this? Because you're going to need the extra money because of everything that we've talked about on this show over the course of so many years because of the changes in college athletics. You need more money to be able to make more money and to be able to keep up so you can pay athletes and all this that the challenge that this job now entails. And what would you say, like 75 at the bare minimum % of that is going to be fundraising, is to be able to find new ways to make revenue. And he didn't mention anything about TV deals. He didn't mention anything about, community events or anything like that. He went straight to the stadium. And the way he talked about it, it almost sounded like that was a gold mine that we've yet to really tap into.
Well, to your point about percentages of importance of what an athletics director does, not just the specifics of Jeremiah Donati's job, but I joke a lot with you and the audience about like for college football, like a coach, there's 10 things that he has to worry about, and 7 of them are recruiting. To your 75% point. Same thing for an AD. There's 10 things an AD has to worry about, and 7 of them are fundraising.
I probably undersold the importance of it. It's probably more 85 to 90, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Being able to find money.
Those things kind of mirror one another in that respect. But and I'd love to hear from you guys. I mean, we can kind of keep some of these. But what would you like to? Would you like to see a building like what they've done at Mississippi or Clemson that's behind the end zone and looks down and you can build a whole mess of them and you don't have to worry about anything else? Is it better to take down the Jumbotron and build there and then build smaller but still big screens all across the ballpark like they've done in Tuscaloosa? And again, there's a lot of good options, right? As long as you make a lot of money, nobody's going to care.
That's the goal.
Hour 3 coming up.
Sure, you all have heard there's a pretty big football game happening, not this Sunday, but Sunday after, down in New Orleans, and you can enjoy that game on an elevated level, more so than ever before with my friends over at Prize Picks. Why is that, Elijah? Why will I enjoy this game more than I already do with Prize Picks? Because you can profit off of it. All you got to do is download the app, pick at least 2 players from both teams, more or less on their stat projections, whatever that stat may be, pass yards, rush yards, receiving yards. And if they hit, you win. You win up to 100 times your cash. And Prize Picks is helping you out because they're giving you another free square, like they did with Jaden Daniels last week. This time, it's Patrick Mahomes. Is he going to get more than 0.5 passing yards? Yeah, I like my odds on that. But you can do the same. Just download the app today, use promo code 1075GAME, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, promo code 1075GAME. Prize Picks, run your game. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one on Fort Jackson Boulevard at I-77, another one on I-20 eastbound after Spears Creek Church Road near exit 82, North Main Street at Wilson Boulevard, US 176 at Broad River Road at St. Andrews Road, and lastly one on Weed Drive at South Carolina 6.
And it is 5 o'clock news time on this Wednesday. Welcome back in. Final hour of the postgame show as well. Alongside Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. We appreciate you being with us. We will start with yet another disappointment last night at Stegman Coliseum as the Gamecocks fall to the Georgia Bulldogs. Final score 71-60. Carolina was down 11 early, cut it to 2, down 14 at the break. Jamari Thomas did have a nice second half, scoring 16 of his 19 in the final 20 minutes, but not nearly enough. And Georgia just continued really throughout the ball game to kind of keep Carolina at arm's length. The Gamecock defense allowing Georgia to hit 52% of their shots. I'm rounding up a little bit, but for the sake of the discussion, South Carolina shooting under 42%. Neither team it looked like anybody that's going to go out and be a world beater at any other point. Again, there were 11 combined losses in a row going into last night's game, so somebody was going to end a losing streak, and it ended up being the Georgia Bulldogs. Elijah, as we said, to be serious and kind of, say it with a smile at the same time, part of what we do is cover these teams. And, David Cloninger joined us in the last hour, and he echoed something that you and I have been saying a lot. This team is playing basketball. They're not out there going, this sucks, I don't want to be here. They're playing.
Not mailing it in.
They're not. And that's a credit to them and their head coach. We had Jeremiah Donati on yesterday's program, the new AD, who said, look, this isn't about Lamont's ability to coach. He's got a great system that works, and he's right. It does. This is about the horses to run the race. And there's not much you can do about that right now. And, again, that's not to disparage those guys on the team. You've had some injuries. You had some guys that maybe just look, in the portal, you can look at stats, and you can look at film. And it just may be that what you see in a certain conference somewhere may not translate here. Or even a Nick Pringle, that what he was doing and what he was asked to do in his role at Bama changes once he gets to Columbia. And it's not the same, even within the same conference. Whereas maybe Miles Studi last year, who transferred from within the conference, did have a bigger performance for Carolina, or and this year Miles is hurt. How much different is this team? And you don't use it as an excuse; it's a reason, but it happens. And when you're already thin, it just makes that hill that much more difficult to climb. I don't know what happens this weekend. I believe, just based on what we look at, that South Carolina is likely to be 0-9. There's a couple of wins out there somewhere, and maybe you go get one. Look, you played well in a lot of these games, but it's just not happening.
Well, what we're going to learn on Saturday is how emotionally invested they still are, and how in this season they still are, because we've given them credit, as we should, for still competing, right? Like, look, I fully understand that if ifs and thans or pots and pans, the whole world would be a kitchen, but if you make your free throws at the end of the Auburn game, you beat Auburn. If you score in overtime and you don't wait till the last 10 minutes of the game to score against Mississippi State at home, you probably beat them. If you're able to handle a press against Florida, you beat Florida. And if you're able to just not turn the ball over 20 plus times, you probably beat Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt. And that's something Tennessee and Kentucky couldn't do. Yeah. Right? So you've seen some proof of concept, even with the limited offensive production that you have, and those can be really discouraging losses. What I don't want to see is this program do what Vanderbilt did in 2018-19, where they went winless in conference play, and by the time you got to February, they were getting blown out every game, and none of those games were competitive because that team absolutely mailed it in. And against Texas A&M, you cannot be half invested and play the Texas A&M Aggies, right, because they are probably the most physical team in the SEC. The
which
best
is saying
offensive
something.
Rebounding team, which says a lot.
Because this is a physical league. This has always been a physical league.
Dude, this is a Texas A&M team this year that is, they're 5-3 in the SEC play. They're a shoe-in to be a top 6 or 7 seed in the NCAA tournament, and they are 284th in the country in shooting.
Wow.
They're atrocious. They cannot hit the broadside of a barn when it comes to shooting the basketball. But you know what? They're the best rebounding team in college basketball. Offensive rebounding team by a mile.
Right.
And they crash the glass so hard, and like they are really good. They're elite defensively, also top 10 in the country because they're so physical and because they're incredibly athletic. You cannot, for lack of a better term, you can't half-ass this game.
No,
right?
yeah,
Like if this is a game that you
100%.
come in pouting and feeling sorry for yourself, and
we haven't seen that yet. And I know you're not predicting that we will.
Exactly. Because
And
if
I'm
you
not
do that,
either.
you'll lose by 40,
Sure.
right? But if you end up making this a competitive game, it's because you have to really work and grind in that setting to make it so, and that has to make you feel a little bit more encouraged that they haven't lost sight of any type of improvement that you can look at moving forward. But that's one thing about these losses too, man, is that a lot of them are really avoidable, and you got to be able to correct a lot of those small things to make yourself just feel better about your future at this point.
Here's Lamont Paris in postgame, and we'll have a few things over the course of the next little bit from Lamont. But for now, a familiar ending for South Carolina last night.
Well, we find ourselves in, unfortunately, a familiar territory with a similar culprit in terms of we turned the ball over 17 times. We gave up 11 second chance points. And those things impact the game. They just do. I'd like to live in a world where you could do those things and still have a great chance to win, but that's not reality. And so we have to figure a way to stop turning the ball over. Whether that's a change in what we're doing offensively, too many decisions. It's not as much decision. Sometimes it is. I think sometimes it's just a guy crawls into us and he really impacts our ability individually to complete a play that, over the years I have considered to be a pretty garden variety normal play. And so we have to get better at that. We spend a lot of time at practice passing and catching, probably more than 95% of teams in the country, I would say. But it's got to translate over to the games. So
You and I talked this morning, Elijah, and Lamont hit on it, which is one of the reasons that you and I discussed it this morning. Do we need to alter our offensive style of play to better protect the basketball, to play what would end up being, this is now my word, not his or yours, what to some might be a more boring brand of basketball, but, milk some clock, work the shot, find your shooter, probably take more threes in an effort to maximize the possession. And he said it right there. We work on moving the basketball a lot, and yet we're turning it over. Next week, you don't have a midweek game. Mm-hmm. But after that, you travel to Rupp. And again, Kentucky beat Tennessee in Knoxville last night. Take that as you will. It's hard to make wholesale change, and so he's not going to alter his coaching philosophy in a week's time. But might that be something that's on the horizon? Just how far can you go with a so-called tweak of the offense?
Yeah, my magic 8 ball would say nothing. Because from what I watched, like in terms of avoiding turnovers, they kind of do run a lot of stuff that is pretty turnover safe. A lot of dribble handoffs. There are a lot.
Do they
of
panic?
actions.
I think there's some of that.
I think there is some panic, and what you heard in that clip too was Lamont talk about somebody gets up in your crawl defensively and you don't know how to handle that, right? And you got to be able to handle intense ball pressure, and sometimes that's what causes those turnovers is panic. I think another thing too is fundamentally your guards aren't good passers. Mm-hmm. And when you play really good defenses that rotate well, or in Georgia's case last night, are very long and athletic, right? Their forwards are long and athletic, and that's why they block a ton of shots. And that's also why they can get steals, because they play passing lanes really well. And if you can't make the pass, if the pass is there but you just don't make it, then the scheme cancels itself out. Like in the Vanderbilt game, this is one of the prime examples this year of what I've seen of this team's, struggles to pass the ball. It's Morris and Nick Pringle on a ball screen. Morris is the ball handler, Nick's the screener. Screen happens, and then there's that small window that happens after a ball screen where you have that pocket pass, usually a bounce pass, in between two defenders to hit the roll man on the way to the basket. And that pass, instead of being bounced in between the defenders and going into the hands of Nick, is at Nick's foot, and the ball ends up going out of bounds. That's a fundamental thing. That's a fundamental, like, you have to be better at passing the basketball, right? Like, the right choice was made. And I think Lamont mentioned that in that clip too. Like, he doesn't think it's the decisions. It's just like the execution at this point. If you're not fundamentally sound with passing and moving the ball, and on January 29th, you're not going to be in February. At this point, you're just going to have to clean a lot of stuff up. And sometimes last night, too, there were instances of players being afraid to make the right pass. Like, there was a rip screen that happened.
Is that a different kind of panic?
It is. It's a different kind of panic. Like,
that's what I sense more than anything, man. And I hate doing that and putting that on kids. And I don't know it to be the complete.
It's certainly the perception. Yeah,
Yeah.
but certainly, I mean, like last night, Benjamin Boston's Verdonk had the ball at the top of the key. A rip screen happens, and he has, I believe it's Jacoby, going down the middle of the floor, and that pass is wide open if you make the pass right then. But you could see some hesitation, and by the time that he was getting ready to fire it, the pass is gone, right?
He had another play down low where he could have gone up, and he decided to pass instead. And I thought, man, why you just, so that's not about Benjamin alone. Again,
this is an everybody.
Well, I saw, I mean, because Zach Davis against Florida, I saw, when they were doing that full court press, and I saw Zach's eyes a couple of times. I'm like, that's just fear.
Yeah. And you're not going to win that way. And a lot of this time, like, that's, I think if you're the coaching staff, is what's so frustrating, is a lot of this is so correctable, right? And it makes me like, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in these practices, just to be able to see, because a lot of this is just fundamental, very correctable stuff.
We'll talk more basketball in a second. A couple of you on the phone lines that want to hit us too, 803-404-6100. We'll do it coming up in just a minute. Continuing our integrated media headlines of the day away from the Gamecocks, according to Heather Dinich and what she is reporting via the Columbus Dispatch. Ohio State football staffer Joe Lieberger, a quality control coach, was placed on administrative leave from the Buckeye program back in December. No reason given, according to the Columbus Dispatch. They reported this story after the, they first reported this story after the championship game. The news came on the heels of Penn State, according to Heather, hiring Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator. The letter, I'll read verbatim here, the letter to Lieberger, which ordered him to return everything. I mean, basically, it said, return all university property and keys. Do not delete any emails, documents, or materials produced during your tenure as an employee. It did not specify the allegations. The investigation was initiated by the Office of Institutional Equity, which helps the campus community, quote, prevent and respond to all forms of protected class harassment, discrimination, and sexual misconduct. He has a lawyer who says, while my client twists in the wind, the university machine moves at its own pace. But he says this investigation has run too long. Lieberger has been with the Ohio State program for 4 seasons. So interesting news there as they celebrate a national championship. And finally, in our integrated media headlines of the day, Bill Belichick, the new head coach at the University of North Carolina, has a suggestion for the National Football League. You ready for this? You seen this yet?
I have not. No, this is, I am excited to learn.
Bill Belichick believes that the National Football League should rename the Lombardi Trophy, named for the legendary Vince Lombardi. Call it the Tom Brady Trophy.
I mean, a solution to a problem nobody brought up. No, what human being is sitting around and being like, you know what? This NFL thing's got an issue
Call
with
on
it.
me.
Oh, yeah.
Bill,
Answer.
Bill Belichick.
Yeah. Has he really sat there and be like, you know what? I'd really enjoy this a whole lot more if we changed the name of the stupid trophy. Nobody cares, buddy. Nobody cares. This fixes nothing.
Maybe they should rename it the Brady Trophy. He won 7 of them. The ghost of Vince Lombardi is going to kick Bill Belichick's ass.
I hope it haunts him forever.
That's our integrated media headlines of the day. Postgame show rolls on. Welcome back in. Postgame show rolls on this Wednesday. Remind you that Elijah and I think everybody, right? Everybody's going to be out at Pro Swing. I think everybody's going to be out there. I don't know. I don't know what Gunner does.
I'm expecting Gunner to be there.
Well,
maybe he's participating.
Expecting Gunner to do almost anything. Expecting it.
And getting
that's on you, my man. That's
if he lets me down, then I only have myself to blame.
Yeah, that's on you.
Don't let me down, Gunner.
A couple of phone calls to get to. Morris has been patient through the headlines. He is up next. Hey, Morris.
Yeah, I just want to say, make a comment about the stadium.
Okay.
USC already has a school of engineering. Why don't we just utilize those students and make that talent, especially with the professors that we have, because a lot of those professors have connections to construction.
Yeah.
But also, you call it what you want to say. Get Clemson involved with the architecture school to help design the stadium, because if we want to keep jobs in the state and make the stadium better, forget the rivalry.
Right.
But you benefit the state because you have jobs that are in state, and you think about a family for it. If you go to the stadium, what the overall experience is. You want a quality product, use quality South Carolina graduates.
Yeah. Well, hey, I don't. That's a great point, man. Thank you for the phone call. I don't know how many of the architects that will be involved trained at Clemson. I don't know.
If they're good, then
I would
not?
think. I mean, because that's the only architecture school in our state. Both schools have fine engineering programs. And I would imagine that you would like to do that. And certainly I would hope that they could find ways to at least have involvement, even if it's like what amounts to like an internship for things like that, so that you get a hands-on experience. I mean, obviously you're not going to be using the engineering school to be your firm. That's not quite how that works, but
because that could be disastrous.
You could have involvement.
Yes.
I would encourage that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, that'd be a really cool project for them to get to say that they helped on.
Yeah, I would encourage that. Well, I'm excited. I've seen that the University of South Carolina's Journalism School is going to be adding a sports broadcasting major. So I remain hopeful that maybe we can help them be involved with that. I don't know how that works, but
I have the fullest sympathies for those journalism students that want to do sports that are there right now that graduate this semester, and then the sports broadcast major comes in next, because that's what happened to me in college.
Yeah. Well, just stay in school, man. Go get a second degree. Not you, but them.
I mean, yeah, because I graduated from my alma mater in December of 2019, and guess what?
Yeah.
In the spring of 2020 was the first semester of the sports broadcasting major.
Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. I know I'm getting ready to graduate, but I tell you what, I'm going to turn back around and go again. Oh, for a master's? No, for another bachelor's degree.
Neither of my parents would have kept. No, they would have hung up by the time I finished the sentence. They would have hung the phone up.
John is up next on 107.5 The Game. Hello, sir.
Okay, to that last guy's point, no, do not use the rival for our stadium, and it doesn't really have to do with the rivalry. It has more to do with the design of their stadium. Have y'all ever sat in the upper deck there? You basically feel like when you're going up, you feel like you are the Price is Right mountain climber.
Oh, you get vertigo, man. It's absolutely vertigo-inducing, but it's because they had such limited space when they built those upper decks. They had to go straight up. But it is the first time I sat in them. Yes, John. It was to use the word. It was disconcerting.
Yeah, I was up there this past November, which was a great day for us. That flyover they had with that refueling plane, if that refueler had been lowered, I would have been able to touch it. But anyway,
but his point was good, John, in that again there are South Carolinians that go to the architecture school because that's their only choice.
I love his statriotism.
Fair enough.
Yeah. When you have Morris points for statriotism.
Statriotism. Well played.
Fair enough, but there are a lot of architectural companies in the state that we can use, and to touch on something that I've talked about with you guys before. Look, as nice as the Floyd building might be, I think you could probably make a lot more money if you put seats there. If you put an upper deck there, like Alabama or LSU did a couple of, not a couple, more like 2 decades ago now.
Yeah.
You could certainly generate more of a profit than what it's making now. I love your idea about a museum. If you want to put a museum somewhere, put it down over by the new ops building. I mean, there's still space down there. David touched on it. They bought all that land that's behind the ops building. Put it there. There's a lot you can do with this. I'm fine with tearing the Jumbotron down and putting 2 smaller Jumbotrons in the corners like they have at Alabama, like they have at LSU, or like they have at Texas A&M. When we were at Alabama last year, we saw that Nick Harbert clearly was down in the end zone, or his foot was down in the end zone when he made his touchdown catch toward the end of the game there. But I think that if you're going to utilize that space, I think you have got to put more seats up there. And you can do one other thing, Jay. I've mentioned this before. You know how the north end zone seats have kind of, or the upper deck there has that one section that kind of juts out in the middle? Why not fill in the 2 corners, if you will, and enclose the entire thing?
The south end zone, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good. I don't know how much that really adds to in terms of, is the cost worth that? I don't disagree with you. To come back to the north end zone, I don't disagree with you about the Floyd building potentially going away, or maybe even being built around, John. I would disagree with you about a new upper deck. I think if you're going to build something there, again, I would take a hard look at what Clemson and Mississippi and others have done with a luxury suite building that faces that way. Because the Jumbotron already, again, I like the fact that so much of Williams-Brice's attendees can see the city. One of my favorite days of the year, or whenever it happens, is a home game with the fair and the city at twilight. That just to me, as a little kid and now as an adult with kids, that's always been awesome. Now, you wouldn't be able to see that from the north end zone, obviously. So my point being, you don't want to do too much to block that aesthetically. But that's what I would do. I don't agree with you that it needs another upper deck for just general seating purposes. I think at that point you build something that you really make a lot of money on, and maybe you build suites that have a window that looks both ways. I don't know. Again, I'm throwing things out there. I'm spitballing as we sit here and talk about those kind of things, but I don't disagree. I mean, the Floyd building, it's not super nice. But it holds a good purpose. And, and to your point, too, John, yeah, you could put a Hall of Fame museum. So I just want them to put it somewhere. Listen, they can buy an old convenience store and turn it into it for all I care. Just put something somewhere so that we can have multi-generational folks actually celebrate these people instead of just kind of having it be in the ether.
Put it in that place, that stadium place that's like right next to the Waffle House.
Sure. Well, except that those people
I don't even know if that building is used for anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they tailgate there on Saturdays, right? So
But does anybody actually go in the building?
I don't know.
Neither do I.
I don't know.
We have to have you as our correspondent.
Or if you could
First
one day,
game next year,
could you? And I'm not advocating for this, but might the National Guard one day want to, could they sell their land and you could buy their building and the National Guard might move their stuff somewhere else. I don't know. There's a lot of great
on the proving
ideas.
grounds.
Yeah, there's a lot of great ideas, but I would not put a new upper deck there. I know, John, you called us before about a big capacity. I'd like to see this football program really generate the demand for a while. And that's easier said than done. But it's clear that the University of South Carolina has to have more luxury seating. And would the easiest way to do it be to remove the Jumbotron and build something there? Again, build 200 suites.
Logistically, it feels like the place to start.
Yeah.
But
and the reason I say 200, again, Jeremiah told us yesterday, Arkansas has 184. Carolina has 18. If you built 200, you're on par with Arkansas. That's not me saying anything other than take it as you will.
Take that, Waltons.
Drive around the SEC is next.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell with a few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways in the Midlands this afternoon. We'll start with one on Clemson Road at Sparkleberry Lane, Enterprise Parkway at Platte Springs Road. Two of them on I-77 northbound. One is at Forest Drive near exit 12. The other at Two Notch Road near exit 17. Also have an accident on Pond Branch Road near Two Notch Road, Rabin Road at US 1 and Two Notch Road, and lastly one on Spear Creek Church Road at US 1 and Two Notch.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Wednesday. Welcome back in. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. Appreciate you being on board. We'll come back around to one more cut in just a second that I think a lot of you will be interested in when it comes to Carolina men's basketball and maybe what is missing most from this year's team relative to last season's fun run through the Southeastern Conference. We'll do that in just a second. In the meantime, let's go over last night's games. Just real quick, again, A&M comes to town on Saturday. They beat Oklahoma last night, 75-68. It doesn't sound like a game that was controlled by one team, but A&M, it's just they were kind of sloppy in a couple of places. As Elijah says, they're not the best offensive team, but they grab boards, they play defense. Oklahoma's not that good. Oklahoma might have played a little bit better than typical, to be honest with you, especially on the road. But A&M wins at home by 7, 75-68. They go to 16-5, 5-3. But the game of the night, really, in the country is Kentucky. 78-73 winners in Knoxville. Last night, Kentucky, Mark Pope's bench is not real deep, but he's got guys that can go. I mean, 4 of Kentucky's starters went more than 30 minutes last night. All 5 of Kentucky's starters scored in double figures. And, you know, we talked about this game yesterday. These two schools and fan bases simply do not like one another, period. Again, the old gag in Knoxville is the reason that Thompson Bowling is as big as it is, and the reason it was built the way it was in the 80s was for one reason and one reason only, to be bigger capacity-wise than Rupp Arena. Like, oh, yeah, we'll show you. Ours is bigger. Flash forward,
old measuring contest.
40 years later, give or take.
An arena measuring contest.
By the way, it is kind of hard to believe that Thompson Bowling is nearing its 40th anniversary.
Yeah, that does feel really weird.
It opened when I was in high school.
And it doesn't seem that old on the inside. No. They've done a really good job taking care of it over the years.
Yeah, you gotta enhance. But again, my God, it's gigantic.
It's huge, man.
It's so big.
And so many places, the saying of "there's not a bad seat in the house" is true. That is not applicable for Thompson Bowling Arena.
But this is a fantastic win for Kentucky. It's not a horrible loss for Tennessee. Now, Tennessee goes to 4-4, and all of a sudden, some of the things that you were saying about Tennessee, not you, but people saying about Tennessee, you start to question just a little bit. But Kentucky's good. And again, you get amped up for this. We talked about Reed Shepherd's performance last year. It felt like Kentucky had no business winning that game in Knoxville last season. And then that kid just went nuts.
He blacked out for 40 minutes of basketball.
It was crazy. It was crazy. How surprised are you that Kentucky won this basketball game?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Because that's in this rivalry too, like in all of college basketball rivalries, usually if the teams are evenly matched, the home team wins a majority of the time because that's just the nature of college basketball, right? This one kind of defies that because I've seen these two programs over the course of 30 years, basically the last 30 years, especially when Tennessee got competent again, that the road team always overperforms.
Yeah.
They either scare the daylights out of the team or they win the game, right? Like you mentioned Reed Shepherd last year. Well, last year Tennessee went to Kentucky and beat the hell out of them. So many other years Tennessee would go to Rupp and beat the hell out of Kentucky when they had no business winning.
Right.
And so many years, I still vividly remember watching Jody Meeks drop 54 on Tennessee in Thompson-Boling Arena like it was nothing on a team that was coached by Billy Gillespie that did not make the NCAA tournament. Tennessee did and went to the Elite Eight. Like that's how this rivalry goes. So I'm not surprised that Kentucky won on the road. But what I am surprised with, Jay Phillips, and this is the most shocking stat from any game in the SEC last night. Tennessee shot 27 two-pointers. They shot 45 threes. They baited Tennessee into shooting the ball from the outside 45 times and presented a blueprint to any team that plays Tennessee this year how to beat them. You sell out to protect the paint. Now, Kentucky has been locked down defensively this year. They were sub 80 in the country.
And that's one of the things I was alluding to when I said you have a little bit of question now, like, all right, Tennessee, like, what are you now? Now, Rick, I think they'll find ways to tweak, and not everybody's Kentucky. But that's an interesting result in
5.
Yeah, in terms of what it may show you. But good win for UK. Carolina, by the way, goes to Rupp next week. And Carolina will have no midweek game next week in conference play. But they'll see Kentucky here pretty soon. And it might be in February that we'll see if Coach Pope gets that thing rolling along here.
I think so.
Good win.
They're too good offensively, man. They're awesome.
Tonight in conference play, Auburn will visit LSU. Alabama goes to Mississippi State. And Texas will be at Ole Miss. Vandy is off this week, and Missouri is off this week. So there you go.
Getting into the bye weeks. Now we're getting into where the standings are a little skewed because they're not full, separation between teams now, and that annoys me. I hate that. But I get it.
One more cut here from Lamont Paris last night. Again, Carolina falling in Athens 71-60. Gamecocks fall to 0-8 in conference play. That's 8 losses in a row, obviously. And one of the things that I think a lot of us have talked about and maybe agreed upon is, man, the guard play last year with Talon Cooper at the 1 and Michi at the 2 was just so good. Lamont last night was asked, from at least Talon's perspective, are you missing that?
Well, no, he was good. But it was in conjunction. It was Talon Cooper in conjunction also with Michi Johnson, who also could alleviate some pressure. And then behind those two guys was Jacoby. And Zach did a little of the ball handling. But, so certainly those guys were, Talon during the season, I think, had the 7th highest assist rate of all active players. So, I mean, that's a hard one to replace. But what happens is, you bring new guys in and guys have opportunity. Some of it happens through growth, opportunity, and then some of it happens through recruiting a new face like Jamari. And so, it's certainly when we brought these guys in, we told them about the opportunities that they would have. Jacoby's played a lot of minutes in this conference. Jamari's played a lot of minutes in his career. But guys have to step up and play better. That's the bulk of what our turnovers are. But some of our bigs turn the ball over too. But that's kind of built into the equation that those guys, if they start to make a lot of plays, they end up turning the ball over. But even, we've had guys like Zach who at one point, this was a real stat, was that through like 15 games, 16 games, he had 15 total turnovers, and then he had 15 in the following 3 games also. So, why would that happen? That has less to do with your ability and just with what you're doing while you're out there on the floor. An emphasis, a commitment to not turning the ball over, Maybe guys feel like they need to do more, and that's what's yielding some of the turnovers.
Yeah, he nails it too. The combination. I asked you. I know you weren't around for it, Elijah, and I haven't gone back and researched it, and I don't always delve into the deep dive numbers the way you like to. But I asked, not rhetorically, it was just 1 year, but was the Michie Johnson, Talon Cooper guard pairing the best at this school since Melvin Watson and B.J. Mackey? I think it is for a tandem.
For tandem, yeah. Devin Downey by himself.
Devin as a scoring one is
Superstar.
probably he's the best scoring one that we've had. And Trey Kelly was an excellent point guard. I don't know that Trey Kelly, he didn't have a running mate like Melvin had BJ. Mm-hmm. Or like Talon had Michie,
yeah.
And Trey, they had some pretty good teams back then. I mean, Coach Odom had some pretty good teams, and I love Trey Kelly. He was great. He was great. I'd love to have seen Ra Felder continue on, but Ra got himself in trouble under Frank Martin. Who knows what that might have done to the Frank Martin era? But in terms of a tandem, I think that's what you're looking at here. Come back on the other side with an interesting story. I know we don't talk a lot of hockey, but I got a story for you. Be right back. Welcome back in. Final few minutes on this Wednesday. Again, you might have heard the promo there during the last commercial break with all of us, even Gunner, will be at Pro Swing all day tomorrow and Friday. Looking forward to it. You think, I would imagine that Bill, like, the couch we did the show on?
Yeah, very comfortable.
Yeah. Don't you, I get the feeling that instead of driving back to Lexington County, that he'll just probably sleep there.
Might as well. I could sleep on that couch. You kidding me?
The thing is, I don't want him to be like napping while we're doing our show.
I won't disturb him.
I will.
I'll bring a pillow and a warm glass of milk and maybe a plate of cookies.
I'm not doing that. You're not going to do that.
Because I care about him. Maybe some chocolate chip Pop-Tarts instead, but fresh out of the toaster.
Still got to go to Krispy Kreme and get some of those Pop-Tart donuts, man. I hadn't had any yet.
My curiosity is going to get the best of me, and I will try that.
So we don't talk a lot of hockey, and I'm not going to talk about the sport so much, but I was really hoping that the nickname of the Utah NHL team.
The artist formerly known as the Arizona Coyotes.
That's right. They moved up from Phoenix because they basically ran out of money, and nobody was going.
They were playing in a college arena.
The ice kept melting. Maybe this was a bad idea.
Yeah, pro hockey team out here where no one cares
So now instead they've gone to, a city that is known for its winter activity. And has even hosted a Winter Olympics. And will host another Winter Olympics, 2030?
And has an arena that holds more than like 9,000 people.
Yeah, they got an NBA team and everything. But they were going to more than likely be called the Utah Yetis. I didn't like the singular. I don't know what the,
I thought... Well,
they were gonna. They thought that's what it was. They had a fan vote, but then they had to submit 20 different nicknames to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and some of their choices were dismissed by the federal government. Among them, in fact, the biggest refusal that the government told the Utah Hockey Club was Yetis. Can't use it. I'll read verbatim here from the AP report. The USPTO rejected a trademark application from the team for Utah Yetis because of, quote, the likelihood of confusion for consumers to other companies and brands that use the name. Utah Hockey Club was seeking to use Utah Yetis on a variety of clothing items. The USPTO said a database search turned up, quote, a number of third-party marks registered for use in connection with the same or similar goods and or services as those of both applicant and registrant in this case. And you guessed it, what was the biggest one they found that could cause some issues? Yeti coolers.
Of course.
So...
Why the NHL should have sent Stanley Cup a cease and desist letter.
I know, right? So, exactly, yes. I actually even said that to my daughters one time. I was like, where'd they get that name? So you would say to yourself, well, why don't they call Yeti Cooler? And maybe they can work a deal. Quote from the hockey club. We engaged deeply with the Yeti Cooler Company and worked with them over a process to see if there was some coexistence agreement that we could engage with them on. They have a unique and strong trademark on anything published Yeti or Yetis. We did not have a coexistence agreement with Yeti and therefore have decided to move on from that name. Boo.
You know how I know this is not a real hockey team?
Tell me.
Because after the disagreement, they would have dropped the gloves, fought it out, and sat in the penalty box for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's fair. So
soft.
They will now be holding yet another fan vote over the next 4 home games in Salt Lake City. These are the 3. Utah Hockey Club.
Sucks.
Utah Mammoth. Now, why not Mammoths?
Yeah, because same thing with Yetis. Mammoths, plural.
Mammoths.
Yeah.
And the Utah Wasatch, which is named for the mountain range out that way. The team on that one acknowledges it's basically a replacement for Yetis. The name will allow the team to use, quote, a mythical snow creature as its mascot, according to the team. The Wasatch. Mammoths is cool. If you put an S on it and have your big old woolly mammoth, that's cool, man.
That could be cool. That could.
And hockey club, look.
Especially when you play the Nashville Predators and their logo's a saber-toothed tiger, also extinct.
Look at that.
Then you basically have Ice Age.
Yeah.
a mammoth and a saber-tooth tiger.
I mean, see, that's fun. Bringing that weird big-eyed rodent thing, too, and you got yourself a show, man.
It says sloth, right? I mean,
I don't know.
I think so.
I've only seen
sloth.
My kids, when they were younger, I think they watched Ice Age. I know Ray Romano's in that, right? That's about all.
Certainly is. I think he's the mammoth.
I think he is. Mammoths with an S. The big old mammoth.
I like that a whole lot more than Wasatch.
But if you get to use a Yeti and you're calling yourself something else, like I'm down. Like Alabama's the Crimson Tide and they got a big elephant.
Call me Deacon Blues.
If they had a fan vote online, I'd vote for mammoths. We'll see y'all at Pro Swing tomorrow. You might have a nickname for your house because you've lived in it so long and you love it, right? You can have a family vote on that. But you may also be saying, as a family vote, what do we want to fix first? We've been here a while. Well, listen, when you have a Palmetto Citizens home equity line of credit, then you can vote on what to fix first and then go get it done over a 10-year draw period. Take advantage of the equity in your home and take advantage of lower rates and fewer fees by working with a not-for-profit federal credit union like Palmetto Citizens. They know this area, y'all, big time. They've been here since the 1930s, and they only work in the Midlands. But they got 14 locations, so they really are spread out. So you can work with their great professionals wherever you might live across the greater Columbia area. My wife and I are members. We love what they've done for us. Again, lower rates, fewer fees for all of your banking needs, but especially that home equity line of credit. Check it out. See what they can do for you. Apply online at palmettocitizens.org. Stop in and see them. Palmetto Citizens. Achieve your potential.